Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Crit Hit Reviews with your host, Arlyeon. On today's episode, I'll be talking about Black Forest Games' repeatedly renamed Rogue Stormers. True story, it was once Diesel Stormers. Welcome to the city of Ravendale, a steampunk enthusiast's wet dream, which is also in the process of being violently liberated from the tyrannical rule of Hector von Garg. And, well, that's about that, really. There's not much in the way of cutscenes or story as you progress through the game, though there is an epilogue which at least helps to fill in a bit about the aftermath of things. That's not to say that there isn't lore in the game, as some snippets of story can be found in the characters' bios as you unlock them, but the crux of what you'll be learning flavor-wise needs to be unlocked. And it's suffice to say that even after beating the game a handful of times, I never even came close to unlocking all the lore and earning more context for how and why things happened as they did. It also doesn't help that you actually don't get to explicitly know just how to unlock various pieces of lore, though it seemed to be tied to either acquiring gold or slaughtering veritable tides of green goblin flesh. With that said, it's time to dive into the meat of Rogue Stormers, even if it's a bit light on context sometimes. Suffice to say, it starts out as a challenging run-and-gun platformer which sees you rampaging across randomly generated stages chock full of treasure, traps, and monsters. Seeing you through the violent crusade against evil is your erstwhile crew, which starts a little sparse at first, truth be told. Each of the characters have their own starting weapons, as well as traits like more health, gold, or even keys to open chests, but you only gain access to them after you've managed to pick up enough gold during your runs. Thankfully, the threshold for gaining these new characters is relatively low, your progress towards it carries over between games, and the unlocks are permanent. And speaking of progression, there's two forms that you'll be relying on in the game. The first, and the one that lends the most to its roguelite nature, is your character's experience, which enables you to choose from a randomized selection of 2 character perks every time you level, and which gradually stack up in power as you progress to give you an easier time both starting off and progressing. That said, you can also unlock new items to find during your runs, which are tied to the game's various achievements. This factors into the second kind of progression you'll be making, as the crux of your strength tends to come from passive items you acquire from chests, gachapods, and the shop during your current run. Considering that enemies escalate in strength and especially durability as you progress through the game, gear is key. In fact, with the bosses being absolute units and sheer tankiness, I frequently felt compelled to scour the levels in their entirety to get gold and keys so I could plunder as much as I could. Which is probably why I was surprised by how viable co-op was, and that's because Rogue Stormers is one of the rare co-op roguelikes that didn't make it as punishing as it could be. For one thing, whenever any player picks up a healing item, everyone is healed, which even remains useful if someone dies, since those heals are then count towards reviving said deceased trooper. What's more is the fact that gold is also shared, though not as an even split. Rather, it gives all players something like 70% of the gold drop's value, which helps to ensure that players won't fall behind and even allows the group to access more loot than they might normally on their own. Moving on, as far as the sound went, I found it enjoyable enough, and I certainly didn't mind rampaging through the city, even if nothing stuck out to me as particularly noteworthy. Now, the visual department, Rogue Stormers is fairly nice looking. Whilst you will come to see similar set pieces even over just a handful of runs, it's overall pleasant to look at, and the enemy design isn't bad. It also manages to avoid becoming a complete clusterfuck, despite there being the occasional storm of bullets hurtling your way after you annoy a handful of grunts. But with all that said, what are my final feelings on it? Well, first off, I really do wish there'd been a more accessible way to just learn the story. From the outset, it seems incredibly clear that Rogue Stormers intends you to grind. A lot. And this extends to the gameplay too, as whether it's the increasingly sparse trickle of lores you uncover, to the sometimes grueling achievements that expect you to play through the game 20 times. And this extends to the gameplay too, as whether it's the increasingly sparse trickle of lore you can cover, to the sometimes grueling achievements and their associated item unlocks, the game seems absolutely dedicated to seeing you cycle through it an excessive number of times. And that was a little weird, since I was typically clearing it on my second or third run through as the various characters, at least once I embraced the weirdly gamble-centric advancement of everything. I really wasn't a fan of the randomized perk system when you leveled. Like, give me more agency, please. And the fact that most of your strength came from either blindly throwing money at gacha pods or spending on chests was a little bit irritating. Still, despite the failings of the system, it did manage to grow on me. Once I managed to get a feel for the game, gained a few perk levels, and grew accustomed to the fact that it really wanted me to gamble more often, I began to steadily accumulate wins on the characters. In fact, I usually manage to be able to clear it on my third run, which says a little bit just how much of a difference the starting perks can make for a good start once you start to invest a few levels into them. That said, I definitely found it a little disconcerting as to just how much player advancement was a blind gamble. Sure, they are generally helpful additions, but it was a little bit weird to me that so much of my kit ended up being acquired blindly. Now, admittedly, I did enjoy how its co-op played out, and I really think it would shine in a larger party if I had more friends willing to storm with me, but my ultimate takeaway for the game was that it's a fumble. Decent to itch a roguelite or run and gun scratch, but ultimately more likely to appeal to someone needing a quick fix, or who specifically wants a title they can run through with a friend. Anywho, thanks for tuning in. If you agree, disagree, or just have something to say to me, feel free to comment. And for those interested in more indie reviews, developer interviews, podcasts, or Monday TTRPG content, hit the subscribe button and the bell so you know when there's a new release. There's also a Discord. You can click the link in the banner or the description to become a part of our community, the Crit Hit Cauldron. Lastly, if you'd like to help support our channel, we do have a coffee running now to help supplement funds for a lovely editor, and to make sure we can continue to provide quality content. Again, check the description in the banner for them links. That said, I'll catch you on the next episode of Crit Hit. Take care till then, folks.